Something feels off. You can't quite put your finger on it. But there's this nagging sense that your life isn't aligning the way it should. You go through the motions. You wake up, pray, go to work, pay bills, maybe even give to your church, and yet, deep down, a part of you feels uneasy. There's a subtle tension that you can't shake, a whisper in the back of your mind that says, something isn't right. Most people ignore it, or they try to distract themselves with busyness, social media, or the next task on their to-do list. But God planted this awareness in you for a reason. That feeling, that discomfort, is your soul trying to tell you that something crucial is off balance in your spiritual life, your heart, or even in the way you relate to your own finances. You might be asking yourself, why can't I just feel peace? You've prayed about your life, your money, your relationships. You've done all the things you were told to do. You've read the books, listened to the podcasts, tried the plans, and yet something is missing. There's a disconnect. And if you're honest, part of you knows it. You feel it in the quiet moments, when no one is watching, when you're lying in bed and the world seems still. It is almost as if you've been trained to expect that God's presence should be loud, visible, or immediately comforting, and when it isn't, you assume something is wrong with you. But the truth is, the discomfort you feel is not a sign of failure. It's a signal. It is a call to wake up and examine the areas of your life where you may be unconsciously giving control to fear, worry, or misplaced priorities. Take a moment to consider your relationship with money. You probably think, I pray about it, I tithe, I try to be responsible. But if you're honest with yourself, there's a tension underneath. Every dollar that comes into your hands has a subtle power over your emotions. The thought of losing it, not having enough, or failing to provide creates anxiety that you hide from others, and maybe even from God. You were created to trust Him, yet in practice, the fear of scarcity quietly takes control. This isn't just a financial problem, it's a spiritual one. When we allow worry to dictate our actions, we shift our dependence from God to our own ability to control circumstances. And this is where the sense of something being off becomes so persistent. It's not a matter of obedience. It's a matter of the heart being misaligned. Your emotions are also part of the equation. You may be someone who prays faithfully but still feels hollow. Or perhaps you are involved in church activities, volunteering, giving, but still experience a gnawing sense of incompleteness. It's confusing, because outwardly everything looks right, but inwardly there's a tugging unease. This unease is not a flaw, it is a mirror reflecting the hidden fears and doubts you carry. It is showing you where your faith is being tested, not through external trials alone, but by the quiet dissonance that exists when you allow fear, doubt, or misplaced control to creep into your heart. God does not want your obedience to be mechanical. He wants it to be rooted in trust and peace. And this is the moment to confront the reality that your spiritual life, though outwardly orderly, may be entangled with hidden anxieties and unspoken fears. Think about the way you approach decisions. You might pride yourself on being careful, deliberate, and responsible, and yet the way you feel, the sense of unease, suggests that your decisions are being influenced by something deeper than wisdom or discernment. Fear has a way of sneaking into your choices, quietly shifting your priorities. It can distort your understanding of God's timing, His promises, and His provision. You may find yourself following advice, doing all the right things, and still feeling wronged or restless. This is the subtle trap. It is not the external circumstances that are off, it is the internal alignment of your heart and your trust in God that needs attention. Now, let's talk about prayer. You may feel frustrated that prayer seems ineffective. You speak the words, but the peace you're seeking never comes. You may even question whether God hears you or whether He is truly involved in your life. Here's the difficult truth. God is not silent because He's absent, nor because you're doing something wrong in a superficial sense. He is silent in the moments where He is calling you to confront the hidden truths of your heart. He is quiet because the loud distractions, the anxieties, and the unexamined fears are still dominating the spaces where his peace could take root. He wants you to recognize what is controlling you, what has authority in your life that doesn't belong to him. Only when these things are identified can you begin to experience the kind of trust and freedom that prayer is meant to bring. If you're watching this and feeling uneasy, it's important to understand that this awareness is a gift. It is uncomfortable because it's meaningful. It is pointing you to areas where your faith is alive, yet constrained by fear, pride, or misplaced control. The dissonance you feel is not a punishment, it is a divine signal that you are at a threshold. And every moment you spend ignoring it only prolongs the tension in your life. Recognizing it, confronting it, and allowing God's truth to realign your heart is where transformation begins. You might also notice that the people around you don't seem to be dealing with the same tension, and that can make the unease feel even more isolating. Friends, colleagues, or even church members may appear composed, confident, or content, and you may wonder if something is inherently wrong with you. This comparison only deepens the discomfort. Because you're measuring your inner reality against external appearances, the truth is, most of the people who seem fine are simply not confronting their internal fears the way you are being called to. They may be numbing themselves with routines, distractions, or superficial religious practices. You, on the other hand, are experiencing a heightened awareness, a gift that brings both discomfort and opportunity. That awareness is the very thing that can lead you to a more authentic faith, a faith that is alive, courageous, and deeply connected to God's truth. Consider the hidden narratives you tell yourself every day. These are the internal stories that shape your perception of your spiritual journey, your finances, and your decisions. Perhaps you tell yourself, "I should feel more grateful," or "if I just try harder, everything will be fine." You might even think, "I must be failing spiritually because peace doesn't come naturally to me." These narratives are subtle but powerful, steering your emotions, actions, and faith in directions that often contradict God's intention for your heart. When your inner story is dominated by fear, guilt, or comparison, it creates a friction that no amount of routine religious activity can smooth over. This friction is a major reason why something feels off. It is a signal that your heart is trying to reconcile your outward obedience with the inward unrest that you haven't fully acknowledged. Another critical dimension to this unease is how your mind interprets God's silence. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is not a lack of love. Silence is often the space where God is working behind the scenes. But it is also the space that exposes where we are attempting to control outcomes, rather than trusting Him fully. Every time you feel abandoned, frustrated, or unheard in prayer, it is an opportunity to examine what in your life has authority over your peace. Is it fear of loss? Is it the desire to control others' perceptions? Is it the anxiety of not having enough? Identifying these hidden rulers is uncomfortable, but necessary. God's quiet is meant to illuminate these internal masters, so that your faith can become more resilient, more honest, and more deeply rooted. The way you handle expectations, both your own and those imposed by society or the church, also contributes to the feeling that something is off. There is a subtle but powerful pressure to perform, to look successful, obedient, generous, and spiritually mature at all times. Social media amplifies this pressure, showing curated lives of people who appear to have it all together, and you begin to wonder why your own heart doesn't match the image you project. This tension is a form of spiritual dissonance. It signals that your obedience, your giving, your efforts, while genuine, may still be entangled with external approval rather than complete trust in God. Recognizing this dissonance is a step toward liberation, because it shows where your heart is not yet fully aligned with God's purposes. It is also important to confront the quiet influence of fear in the way you make decisions. Fear is subtle. It does not always manifest as panic or obvious anxiety. Often, it masquerades as caution, prudence, or rational planning. You may say, "I'm being responsible," when in reality, fear is dictating your steps. Fear can prevent you from obeying God's direction, stepping into opportunities, or even trusting Him with the resources He has provided. Fear is a thief, quietly stealing your confidence, your peace, and your freedom. When you acknowledge its presence, you begin to see how deeply it has shaped your life, and only then can you start disentangling yourself from it. Finally, reflect on the subtle ways you might be substituting rituals for real trust. Prayer, church attendance, Bible reading, and charitable giving are all vital, but they are not substitutes for a heart fully surrendered. You might follow all the prescribed spiritual disciplines, yet still experience this gnawing sense of imbalance. The root is not in the acts themselves, but in what motivates them. Are they performed out of duty, fear, or a desire for control? Or are they expressions of genuine dependence on God? This distinction is essential. The feeling that something is off is often a direct indicator that your spiritual routines are being executed without full alignment of heart and trust. It is a call to examine motivation, expectation, and the subtle idols that reside even in the life of a devoted believer. The truth is, God is aware of every subtle unrest, every hidden fear, every small attempt to manipulate circumstances instead of surrendering them. He is not surprised or disappointed. Instead, He is inviting you to confront these truths so that your faith can grow deeper and more resilient. The discomfort you feel is not a flaw. It is a sign that God is working in your life in a way that will eventually bear fruit if you are willing to face the uncomfortable realities and allow Him to recalibrate your heart. As you sit with this awareness, you may begin to notice the small patterns in your daily life that contribute to the tension inside you. Maybe it is the way you check your bank account more than necessary, anticipating a shortage that may never come. Perhaps it is the constant replaying of past mistakes, feeling guilt or shame over choices that cannot be undone. It could be the subtle anxiety in conversations about money or decisions about your future, where even the simplest options are clouded by fear. These seemingly minor habits are indicators of the deeper unrest that you feel. They are not coincidences. They are signs pointing to areas of your heart that need honest attention. God does not overlook these details. He wants you to recognize them so that you can confront the sources of your fear and misalignment before they create lasting damage to your faith, your relationships, or your peace of mind. Consider the role of pride in your unease. Pride can masquerade as competence or diligence, convincing you that everything must be managed by your own strength. You may have been told that God rewards hard work, responsibility, and careful planning, which is true in one sense, but it is not the full picture. When pride drives your actions, even good works become a substitute for trust. The more you rely on your own ability to control outcomes, the more your spirit feels constrained, and the sense of something being off intensifies. Recognizing pride is uncomfortable because it forces you to confront your own limitations and the illusions of self-sufficiency. Yet this recognition is precisely the moment where genuine spiritual growth begins. When you can identify pride and surrender it to God, the pressure that has weighed on your heart starts to lift, creating space for true peace. Another crucial element is honesty with yourself about fear. Fear is not always dramatic or obvious. It often presents as caution or practicality, making it easy to overlook. You may tell yourself that your choices are careful or responsible, when in truth they are motivated by an underlying anxiety about loss, rejection, or failure. This fear subtly controls your decisions, your emotions, and even your spiritual practices. Prayer and devotion can be influenced by fear, turning what should be acts of trust into exercises of self-assurance. Understanding this dynamic requires courage. You must examine where fear has authority in your life, naming it for what it truly is. Only then can you begin to disentangle yourself from its influence and restore a heart fully aligned with God. Take a moment to reflect on trust. Trust is more than a mental acknowledgement of God's sovereignty. It is a state of the heart where faith and action are inseparable. You cannot truly obey God while allowing fear, control, or anxiety to dominate your decisions. Trust requires releasing the illusion that you are responsible for outcomes that only He can govern. It means acknowledging that your life, your resources, and your future are ultimately in His hands. When this trust is genuine, it transforms your experience of daily life. Money, decisions, and responsibilities no longer carry the same weight because your peace no longer depends on controlling every detail. You begin to operate from a place of confidence and alignment rather than tension and unrest. It is also essential to examine your expectations about God and His timing. You may have anticipated that certain prayers, efforts, or sacrifices would produce immediate results. When the outcomes do not align with your expectations, frustration and disappointment set in. The feeling that something is off often comes from the gap between expectation and reality. Yet the Bible repeatedly reminds us that God's ways are higher than ours, and His timing is perfect even when it does not conform to our understanding. Embracing this truth allows your heart to release the tension caused by unmet expectations. You start to see that the unease you feel is not a sign of spiritual failure, but a signal guiding you toward deeper trust, patience, and alignment with God's purposes. Consider the subtle but powerful effect of self-comparison. Observing others who seem spiritually or financially secure can make your own discontent sharper. You might wonder why your life feels heavy or incomplete while theirs appears effortless. This comparison is dangerous because it obscures your unique journey. Each believer's path is different, and your unease may be precisely what God is using to refine your character, deepen your faith, and teach you reliance on Him. Recognizing this helps you stop measuring your journey against the lives of others and instead focus on what God is calling you to learn, change, or embrace. The awareness you feel, the sense that something is off, is a gift, even though it is uncomfortable. It is an invitation to confront fear, pride, hidden anxieties, and misplaced control. It is a call to realign your heart, release what does not belong to you, and embrace a deeper trust in God. If you pay attention to this discomfort and allow it to guide your reflection and actions, you will discover a peace that is not dependent on circumstances but rooted in His presence. You will begin to recognize that the unease is not a curse but a sign of growth, a signal that your faith is alive and moving toward maturity.